my sweet and salty children of this sour and bitter world, I am overjoyed, honoured and ecstatic to welcome you into me and my friends' world of pure imagination.
The opportunity to work at the V&A has been amazing.
It's a dream. This is actually the first museum I came to in London.
I came here a lot as a kid.
As a designer, it's fantastic to see my vision in such a beautiful environment.
Museums are funny places. We are treasure troves of inspiration, of evolution, of art, design and performance here at the V&A. But of course, all of our materials that we have on display, whether that be object or archival, including our costumes, are static. They're 1 millisecond frozen in time. And of course, for us, the joy of inviting students in to activate the galleries, to be inspired by those costumes, is it brings not only the objects in the collection to life, but it brings the gallery to life.
So the decision as a costume designer is how historically accurate you go with a costume design, or whether you try and change history and you add some contemporary references and influences and you do a kind of fusion design.
Pardon me. What are you doing?
Well, this dress was clearly made for me.
Well, if you read, I think you'll find that it says it's for Eliza Doolittle.
Pardon me? I think you're wrong. I am Eliza Doolittle.
You?
Yeah.
You don't look like Eliza Doolittle.
That's because you are the Eliza Doolittle of the past. I am the new Eliza Doolittle.
All of the aspects of a design, whether historical and contemporary, have a place in kind of modern theatre.
Context and research is a massive part of what we do. You can't design characters, you can't present work to an audience without having points of reference that audience can empathise with or understand or recognise. We look very much at society, culture, period, history to really get a solid starting point for development.
I wanted to get out of the idea that everyone has of Willy Wonka while still keeping those very important symbolic reference to him. I went back to the origins of that in the 1970s for male fashion, which was so interesting to learning about the peacock revolution and research all of these androgynous icons that influence our contemporary society, like David Bowie and Jimi Hendrix and even Beatles and all their extravagant and colorful music outfits.
The students have had an opportunity to look at very traditional and contemporary musicals and have the opportunity to reimagine those protagonists and those characters.
For my design, when I looked back at the productions in the film and in the West End, they were all quite dark. The character of Satine, she was kind of this fallen woman. I wanted to bring more light into my design and into my work and portray her as a kind and a beautiful person.
So we've got both interpretation and we've got design students, and each of them have really thought very thoroughly and researched very extensively into the characters, into the musical, and tried to put their own spin on it in terms of so that they can convey who they are as a designer, but also meeting the requirements of that character. That's been done through things like shape, sculpture, fabric manipulation, dyeing, texture, 3D work.
And also looking into post-impressionism in paintings, which were the details on the bodice. They were hand painted and it was meant to look like she stepped out of a painting.
On the course on BA Costume for Theatre and Screen, we have two pathways which the students can follow from their second year. So they can either choose design or they can choose interpretation. So the interpretation students tend to be the students that will go into industry, work in the workrooms, and they work directly from a designer's sketch or idea. And then the skill of the interpreter is working with fabrication, with print, with texture, and really bringing that costume to life. So they will look at historical references, they'll look at corsetry, underpinnings, bespoke tailoring. So they have a lot of traditional techniques that they will incorporate within their practice. With the designers, they work very much with storytelling, with narratives, character building, and then they will develop their own designs, their own concepts based on those stories. Then they develop their costumes based on those concepts, and then they also make their own designs. So we teach them slightly differently. We teach them to make in a very contemporary way. They do less kind of historical making or referencing. What it allows us to do is really think about the kind of the non-hierarchical approach to performance that we have at Wimbledon.
Context comes into everything, so you have to acknowledge the identity of the costume, and then you also have to acknowledge the identity of the performer, and then these two identities meeting the politics of the space, so the politics of the V&A Paintings Gallery. And I think the meeting point between these different positionalities is what's exciting, and I think this is what evolves art forward.
With the spaces that we've been given and like throughout rehearsals and things, there's a lot of things that have influenced the way that I've made the costume. So I get the design and figure out the silhouettes and everything, but then through rehearsals and practices, some adjustments have needed to be made in the train and the shaping. Yeah, it's just learning how to work in the space and then changing and adapting the costume to fit the space.
And a huge part of the ethos of the acting and performance course at Wimbledon is that it's all about empowering the actors. So how can they go out and create their own work as well?
For me, when it came to performing a reimagined version of Satine, it was kind of redefining her power as a woman in a show that is kind of, her life is dictated a lot of the time. And in this performance, you know, what elements can she bring out of her personality, and what can we tell about Satine that is more than just what is shown plainly in the story?
So as a director, I want to create a space in which everyone feels like they have a voice and that they can share their ideas. And that's really made up this piece. Like, this collaboration between costume and performer has been fundamental to everything. So we've been thinking about the way in which costume impacts the way in which you move, how you take up space, how you distribute your weight in the space, and then it also goes all the way down to how you breathe.
As much as I am a designer and it is my design and my work, I do find it really important that the performer is comfortable in it and there's nothing that they don't particularly like. And when I'm working, I always like to think about my model and their body shape or their proportions.
She would come into the rehearsals and see what we were doing and see what would limit my movement.
I've been putting on the costume kind of in pieces, so every time we've had a fitting, I got like parts of the costume, and then I would know how to, in my character, who I'm playing as Elphaba Throp, I'd be able to figure out how, as her character, how I could take it on into a performance mode. So knowing that I'm gonna have a broom, I knew like which levels, and like with the hats, so think of posture.
The costume itself has impacted my approach to how I take on the character, because there's so many parts of the costume, such as the high heels and the tight corset, the stick and the hat, which all affect the way that I stand and I walk. As soon as I put the costume on, I'm already kind of becoming someone else, just in my physicalities.
Seeing everybody's costume together, the way it's cohesive now, it comes together really beautifully.